Good evening. This is Matt Newman. I apologize. We were planning on a live stream for today, but I don't have enough subscribers. One of the many issues that I have with this, is that most of the people who have tried Apigenic Health and Nutrition are pretty skittish. They don't like coming forward. I got about a little over half a dozen emails here I'm going to be going through, but yeah, most of the contact I have with people is pretty hit and miss. We're going to have a lot of things to talk about today. It's trash day. It's 1 year since I finished the original document that basically outlines the first over-the-counter method to reprogram your cells. This is an effort that really is at the forefront of an incredible amount of effort and research. Countless hours, countless lives have been spent just trying to understand a little bit more about why our bodies continuously fail. And essentially, we're at the end of part of that journey. There's still plenty of research that can be done, in the periphery around it, but given the size, the nature, and the weight that's held by Apigenic Health, we're basically wasting our time by not talking about it, and our money, and our lives, and our resources. We at least pretend to say that it's something that we want. I'm going to be getting into that a little bit more. Really, this video should never have existed. It should never have taken a year for us to only have gotten this far in disclosing it to people. I guess I should start with kind of my view of the history involved here. Cellular reprogramming was, it's pretty old by now in concept. We're dealing with what are known as, this is my first take recording this, so I kind of have to gauge my own pace with it. I'm not going to really cut things through. I want it just to be a full through video where, you just listen to this guy. The majority of you that are ever going to listen to it, it's already too late for millions of people. So by the time you watch this, I don't know, it could be, the majority, it's probably going to be months, years before you're here. So it's like I'm sitting on ground where I knew in the beginning, when I figured out that you could do this with Apigenin, I knew it had to get in front of the eyes of the most technical people involved, and I put it in front of them, basically. I kind of pushed it out into different places on the internet where I knew that they would be looking at it. It was one video in particular, really, that set this off. There were 3D images that were being taken of histones as they're being pulled out or as your DNA is being pulled out from your histones. And it was Dr. David Sinclair's remarks on histone deacetylase inhibition, which triggers that action, and how that is one of the more important, it had more of a significant weight to it. I come from an IT background, so when I heard his explanation, I just immediately thought about data access. Essentially, the majority of the mechanism involved with reprogramming cells is around just having access to the DNA so that the information can be written. I mean, it was very simple between understanding that, and I was playing around with other chemicals that he was working with. I was working with forskolin. I was working with calcium alpha ketoglutarate. which I think one of the questions was about maybe someone didn't read through the Rentry well enough. Maybe I didn't have the note in it at the time, but someone had one of the emails here is about using calcium alpha ketoglutarate, which is in one or two of the first 6 cocktails that were made for this. And really, it went from there. I knew when I made the discovery, I surely wasn't putting it together properly, and it needed to be, further tapped in. The discovery was made October. It was a Friday night, Saturday morning. I think it was the 28th. And by that Saturday evening, I had Tributyrin in my hands. I took it with the same dosage that I took normally with Apigenic. And the result was so profound. I knew I discovered fire. And I knew how big it was. And in that moment, yeah, it felt great. It was fantastic. I felt an incredible sense of responsibility to what I had in front of me. So I took it to the fullest extent that I could. About a month or so later, I was working with some other people online on different thoughts on how it would work. I reached out to one gentleman who makes different videos in this space. Not incredibly popular because he does deep dives into some of the technicals. He basically shrugged it off. His notion with the B12 was that I clearly was doing it wrong because I didn't know, that you could have logarithmic errors that way. But he wouldn't try it, so you couldn't really take his opinion too seriously. Certainly not at the dosages involved. There was another gentleman who I do need to reach back out to who recommended the curcumin, which was very useful. At the time, I was looking for a GSK3 inhibitor and just happened to say, hey, why don't you try this? And it was more or less exactly what I was looking for. So when I heard the name curcumin, I was like, okay. Or the word curcumin, went with it. We've basically assembled the perfect mix of molecules that will do the job. And that would have been December 10th last year. It wasn't until then that I really felt like I, properly hit this out of the park. And there was a video that came out from Sinclair shortly afterwards where, at least from the cues I was reading, he knew. I knew because of the placement, the things that I had on the internet, that it had already gotten in front of the government. And I knew that it was simply a question of time. Whenever humanity gets one of these things that's just so profoundly impactful, we always have problems. We always have difficulty, for one, accepting that it happened. I mean, there are people who deny different aspects of science now. As you can see, zoom in, I still haven't fully caught up. Like literally just yesterday, I felt tightening in my face. I know that I'm still catching up with my new programming. So, it takes time just to have visual evidence of what we've done. But it was last December, a year ago now. The people who should have been able to take care of this issue responsibly, they knew. They knew. And when you're in that position for the first time in your life, like you just feel so overwhelmed with how big it is. Every single human being that lives on this planet, in order for them to have a body that just simply works right, needs to hear what I found. It's like I have to sometimes just turn it off in my head, you know, because it's just the first few weeks when I knew that it really was just, where is it? Come on now. Someone should have showed up by now. Someone should have done something by now, you know, and you realize you do some of the math. Think about how many people are simply dying because they don't know. It's terrifying. Like, I basically put my whole life on hold. I waited a little bit because I didn't want to. I mean, we have examples, you know, people just losing their mind because they're a little bit ahead of everyone else and no one wants to listen to them. You know, we don't need to give it a complicated name. Apologize. It really is like, you know, this video is history. And what is it? Even if we had distribution issues, tens of thousands, hundreds. It all depends on the ultimate impact that apigenic health is able to make in the human body. And as time has gone on, we've found more and more things that we know that it fixes. So, oh God, I have to laugh because I've gone through it for so long with the people in charge of this, or the people who would claim to be in charge of these kinds of things. And I've done everything that I can. I think so. I don't know. Should I just be raving in the streets like a madman? It got pretty close to having me locked up on multiple occasions. They still want to do it. It still definitely wanted to be done. I'd say overall there are 4 excuses, roughly speaking, that are involved here for why we can't just tell people that they don't have to have a lot of these issues anymore with their body. The biggest one, the one that I feel gets the most amount of noise, although I think it is in a lot of ways just noise, is the religious aspect to this. People don't know what to think. There are beliefs and superstitions about how life is and how life should be. And all of these issues, really, in a sense, are multifaceted in that the people at the top are not, in my opinion, simply to blame. In the beginning, they were. But as I've really tried to see, you'd want the people at the top to know about it first, the people more towards the middle, and then people at the bottom. I've done all of it. In the process, anyway, at varying degrees, I've gotten it to a lot of people, and reviews are mixed. You know, some people are very, very keen on making sure that the majority doesn't want to give it to anybody else. They certainly don't want to act. I think that that's pretty fair to say. The majority does not want to do anything. They're very happy that they get it. They're very happy that their loved ones are fixed. But as far as getting it to their neighbor or doing anything like that, there are no protests. nobody wants to organize, not yet anyway, at least after year one. We really haven't been able to organize in any way that I think would be sensible. Maybe this is a multi-year thing, and you're just going to have to look at this guy at 60, and he's going to look like this guy. So, dismissiveness and gaslighting are two of the biggest things, but I think goes over that really is fear. Anyway, religion is one of them. The next thing that people that they use as an excuse to be scared is economics or population, and you could say that those are two separate things. You could say that they're one separate thing. We already are living on a planet where people die of starvation. That's not an abnormal thing to hear about. It still happens. People still have to pay for food. Apigenin, fortified apigenin, is food. You could put it in a cake. So, as far as us working it out economically speaking, I'd be the first to sign up if it would just save one life. I mean, I could give you the list of things that I've agreed to, hypothetically. Just if we disclosed it now, today. I'd give up pretty much anything, just to know that it saved one more person. I've gone through the crying, I've gone through the anger, I've gone through all of the emotions myself. The ultimate blame is definitely not with me. I've done about as much as a single human being can do in this situation. Economics. The fear that the world's going to just become overpopulated with too many immortal people. Frankly, I'm not utterly convinced. I think I may have brought this up in other videos. I'm not completely convinced that everyone's going to be sane after 160. We have to see. I mean, can the human mind actually grasp large amounts of time if it's experienced without the whole personality turning to mush? There'd be nothing physiologically wrong. It wouldn't be Alzheimer's, it's just time. I'm not completely convinced. I've brought up scenarios where what if we give it to everybody, we let everybody have free access to it, but we start putting in some kind of progressive tax structure at 60, and then by the time you're 140, you have the body of a 60, 80-year-old, and you have another 60 years of just having a body that works. There's different ways that we could triage this. Give people hope, simply remove all of these errors, all these problems. But then we'd have to, admit that a lot of the things that we're doing suck. I don't know. I don't think I'm ever going to have a good enough answer. Let's see. That's technically 3 if you're counting the population and economics. The 4th one, I think, is especially disturbing, and I think it's really just targeting me. I've explained before that my personal life has basically been destroyed since I made this discovery. And they try to hit me with this angle that I'm related to someone important. And really, it's just psychology. That if I become famous, then someone else, it's like long lost grandfather shit is what I'm played. Literally, these guys will just come up with whatever excuse they can, saying, we can't do it. We can't do it. It would break the whole system if this was figured out, or if I came to light, or whatever. I know I'm shadow banned. I know that the algorithm works against me, basically. I know that a lot of people know who I am despite that. Like, a lot. A lot. I'm just trying to gather my thoughts. Those would probably be the 4 biggest, best, or most accurate descriptions of the excuses that I'm given. Oh yeah, and on the economic side, the entire medical industry would basically be upturned, you know. Breathe, man, breathe. It's only like, thousands of people that died today because no one wants to listen to you. I mean, they didn't even show up at my house. They'll just follow me around. They did what they could to try to just have me removed. And they, suppose we have to talk about it. Brian Thompson, the CEO gentleman who was shot not that long ago. I've been asked by multiple people if I know anything about that. Some people think that it's definitely related. From my point of view, whether or not it's related is a yes or a no answer, but still also being a yes or it's like if they had just listened to me in December, he would still be alive. Period. Brian Thompson would be alive if you guys just listened to me when this whole thing started. It doesn't have to be that the shooter had Apigenic in mind. It doesn't. The crux of the issue that people would say there is that for the same reason that shooter was out there killing this guy, it's the same reason why Apigenic isn't being disclosed. That economic side to it. And greed. Simple greed. Sometimes I meet a person who is 100% it's greed. Oh yeah, it's definitely greed. Sometimes I meet someone who it's 100%, oh, this is a religious issue. This is a religious issue. Yeah. Some people say, no, it's that, some bullshit about my family history. None of the answers are really gonna be good enough. None of them really matter. So I apologize to the people who've lost a loved one in the past year. And there are a lot, millions and millions of people are going to watch this video eventually when the algo finally, lets people know that this video exists or whatever. Whenever it gets famous, whenever this can't be contained anymore out of convenience. I wish I could give these people a better answer. But there isn't one. I just want to scream at the top of my lungs that this planet's evil. This is the planet where it's normal for a wide set of the population for us to cut off a piece of their body right when they're born. And that's done with religious overtones. A body part that we're now regrowing back. No, dollars to donuts, I'd say, on a very basic level, we're combating against a very basic brutality that's been with humanity since the beginning. And to blame one specific individual like Brian Thompson or whoever got elected or a senator doesn't make sense. It did in the beginning. It did in the beginning because there was more responsibility there. But That's why I took it to the streets. That's why I put out thousands and thousands and thousands of notices all across this city. Just getting people to look at it. Just getting people to know something, you know. It's still not enough. I mean, with how many I put out, there should have been news coverage. Just simply of that act. I mean, I should have had police at my door over that. And to say that they don't know where I am, I mean, the police know in Denver that it was discovered here, Aurora, Colorado. I know who I am. And they don't know what to do. Because at this point, even if they do change their mind, they're going to have to admit that they just threw up their hands and said, we're not going to tell anybody that you can fix all these problems now. Eventually that will have to be admitted. It'll have to be admitted that I was targeted. And they tried to just sweep the whole thing under the rug. So I'm not scared for my life. I'm scared that this was not the planet that I thought it was, you know? You grow up thinking that most of the reason why we have the problems that we do, at least from my perspective, this is, you know, I come from a tinkerer's background. My dad started his own company. He developed his own solutions for different electronics problems, that kind of thing. And I work in IT. I'm a network engineer by trade. I look at the world as, I get it, a problem to be solved. Maybe it's, you know, for the longest time, everyone just wanted to, many people just wanted to say, oh yeah, what were you expect, Matt? This is just how the world works. That the problems with me in my ability to understand my fellow man, when I don't get a coherent explanation from my fellow man, period. It's brutal. It's like the whole thing's decided by a bunch of frat boys. Stuff the nerd in the locker because he made them look stupid. This video should never have been made. It shouldn't have. The guy should have just put it on TV like he was supposed to. That's what the whole thing's for. It's like we don't even have free speech. Because I know that there are people that are on camera every single day who want to talk about it. I know that, I mean, for the sleuths out there who have noticed, you know, in the past year, there's been more than one high-profile person whose face has changed, and it was not Ozempic. I don't need to name him. What do? Do we take every single one of those people and punish them when they're doing it out of fear for what they don't know? Because as of today, this concept is hard-coded as being a year old. The people most responsible for this are at the top, but sorry, we need to get to the point where people organize. We need to do that. And once we can slowly break through that, and I can get other people that are brave enough to come on camera here, talk about their experience and show how their how their body has what'd you say, taken to apigenic health. You know, we all have our own specific issues. tell you, I'm very happy. I'm probably the happiest most with how my sleep quality is now. I'm most happy with that. I'm happy that I don't get creeps or that it hurts to get up or get down. Happy that I recover very quickly whenever I'm doing exercise. And it's like in many ways, because internally it starts changing you faster than it does externally. Just the skin, it takes longer for that, but organs start catching up pretty quickly within a couple of weeks. They really start, like, there are people who are alcoholics who had to quit because they were starting to have issues with their liver, and I wouldn't tell them to go back to it, but they certainly have. That's very common. What do you do for people, other than just try to get it to them? Fear. Fear, despite all the excuses, fear is still dominant in all four of them. All right, are we ready for questions? Let's see. Hold on a second. All right. Let's see what we got here. Are all nutrients supposed to be taken in pill form, or some open and combined and then drunk in shot form? I'd imagine you'd be able to take this in liquid form. I'm not familiar. The biggest concern is because Apigenic is not very bioavailable. It's difficult for the body to get it into the bloodstream. So your biggest concern with that is going to be whether or not it's still contained with it, whether or not the liposome breaks down. You need the Apigenic to be contained within that liposome so it can get through your gut and be properly absorbed. Yeah. Should you only take 2 shots in a day? Yeah, it really is. Some people take a lot. I've taken 3, 4, 5. I've taken a lot in a day before. So I know that it's safe. It really is just what you're comfortable with. Curcumin, don't worry about getting the curcumin up too high. It's mostly the reaction occurring between the Apigenic and the heightened butyrate levels. And that reaction is kind of what's burning, I guess you could say, just, and yeah, the curcumin's there just to make it so the inflammation doesn't get too high. And the B12 is there for errors. I've taken other things with it, NAC is really good. Taking your multivitamin. Yeah. All right. Let's see what we got here. Hopefully I answered. Let's see, next question. Can you benefit from this if you are 20 years of age? I believe so. What's going to be interesting? We need data on it, but I'd imagine that a flat line. See, different parts of the body age at different rates. So even if you get one of these methylation tests, it's only measuring your blood. And that's just the amalgam of, how much methylation is going on up here, 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 here. And when you take fortified Apigenic, you'll notice that. You'll notice that it's working on one part of the body versus another. And during different times that you take it, you'll feel it in different parts of your body. This is because literally the immune system is attaching to regions that it knows it can target them because of external circumstances. I think one of the markers that we were talking about was CD38. And so, yeah, you can definitely take it at 20. You may even be fine taking it at 16. I want hard data on it before I'd say 100% certain, but I even think prepubescent children wouldn't be bad off for having taken it for even just 3, 4, 5 days, at around the age of 5 or 6, just to get, certain aspects of their methylation profile just smoothened out. I see no reason to believe that, shouldn't have smooth eyes at the very least. And some of that bagginess can occur there. And certainly for kids where they have some kind of cellular issue that needs to be reprogrammed, cancer, what have you. I don't want to go through the list because it's just, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that this fixes. Too many to name. Next question. Yeah, I've had people ask this before. How much of the B12 really to take? I eyeball it. As long as it's in the system, I think you're fine. In some cases, I do remember taking more. You really are going to have to feel that out. I would say 2 droppers full is normally what I would take. The first dropper after I've swallowed the first. Take the B12 before you take the Apigenic. Make sure it's already in your system. That's what I would recommend. Because in the instructions that I give you, you don't really have to do it that way. You don't have to stage it. But in my experience, it's preferable. Especially when you have some serious edits that need to be made, or corrections, whatever you want to call, whatever you want to say it is there. It's not really edits though. It's really just corrections. Yeah, just 2. Take 1 before you start when you're taking the prep, and then after you've added in the Apigenic, about an hour later, add in the additional B12. I would say just making sure that it's in your system at all is better than not, because your body will just pull it. One issue that I had at the time that I kind of danced around that most people aren't aware of is I had an ear infection at the same time that I was doing my reprogramming in this ear here. And it was because of compacted earwax that I just hadn't been taking care of. And it led, because of the complication there, because I had this infection that I never treated properly. I had a swollen lymph node, which has long since receded. Some people would have been incredibly terrified by that. I knew it was something else. I knew it was combating an ear infection. And when I added in the B12, it started finally sorting all of those issues out. And I never needed medication for it. I literally had like a full-blown ear infection that I never had to have properly addressed, which has led me to believe that there are going to be infections, highly advanced infections, that this may be useful for. Again, I've heard people say that this has helped, not to the point where they've said that they've been cured, although we need data to say it, but this has definitely helped some people with sexually transmitted diseases. I know that there's been more than a few that have come forward saying that they feel as if they've had a correct at that level, but no one's given me data, So I'm going off by a lot of hearsay, which only adds to the problem. Yeah, here's that question on alpha ketoglutarate. Let me look at this. And I do apologize. This is back from June when I got this question. It wasn't at the top of my list of questions. It's a potent regulator for life perspectives. It was definitely in the mix when I was first experimenting with this. I've tried taking fortified Apigenic with and without this. I also did it with forskolin, which is in forskolin basically activates the OCT4 gene. You could throw in some rapamycin, maybe. It's not really, I mean, it's not needed, is what I'm getting at. As far as the basic structure of it, it can definitely augment it. And I would say adding forskolin augments the process, although the overexpression, the approach is to allow apigenin to ameliorate the tissues primarily and to drive the programming forward rather than trying to see if it'll work well with forskolin or not, or calcium alpha ketoglutarate. I don't believe that they are necessary, and I don't necessarily recommend them, because what you would ultimately want here is the simplest process possible, also the cheapest. It's one less molecule we have to worry about. It is 100% not necessary in order to drive this solution forward. Let's see. This guy's just, yeah, carnitide. It'll boost autophagy. It's not the worst thing to take. The thing is, your body's going to be pushing these cells out on its own. There's no real way that you can speed up the catch-up process. Now, my one exception to that, and this gets into a topic that I haven't wanted to discuss, but the knowledge needs to exist, and we are getting to a cross in the road where my part of this experiment needs to come out. It has to do with using the fortified apigenin with or without the additional histone deacetylase inhibition. Some of you might remember I've been taking apigenin at these dosages for years. I'm very familiar with its effects, its ability to rejuvenate the body and ultimately activate these Yamanaka factor genes. It's not able to do this entirely on its own, which is why the histone deacetylase inhibition, which we're using through tributrin, is so important. And if you have already, think of it like this. The histone deacetylase inhibition allows data access to the DNA. It basically pulls the DNA out of the histone so it can be read and written to if needed. And you're able to go through this process and perform a higher degree, or a degree of catch-up that can be accelerated by taking everything but without the histone deacetylase inhibitor. What I mean is, the only way that you can actually reverse anything is through having that molecule in there. Everything else, if you just take it without the histone deacetylase inhibition, it's going to be working with your cells in that epigenetic state that it's mostly already in. It might be able to do a little bit of additional encoding or not, but it's wholesale through the body. You're at a certain kind of stop. It's like, it's not quite in the sense like you'd be switching gears, although when you take it at high dosages between the two, with or without the histone deacetylase inhibitor, you'll feel that in a sense it is kind of like switching gears. You just don't have that data access. So you're working with the data that you currently have to catch your body up at the fullest potential that it can. And that is definitely something that you can do. I would say be careful with it though. Because again, I played around with this. If you are hard on reprogramming and you yank the histone deacetylase inhibitor, you can fall over. Like literally, like I had an experience where, as it was, I was my immune system, my cells were doing their work, and then slowly, oh, we don't have access to the DNA anymore, and you could feel it, like literally in your body. Some people have done this separate from me and can confirm it. It's quite the experience to really know how this vehicle works. And I'd say that you can do that in an attempt to accelerate the catch-up process. And that's more or less how it works. Yeah. So as far as autophagy goes, you can do it. You can promote it while this is going on. Exercise will do the same thing or something similar. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. It's just not 100% necessary because for the most part, your body's just going to have the most serious changes that you're going to have through this process are not going to be immediate, because even though you're going to feel like that's the case, you're going to take it. You take it for, let's say, a month, and you've really started to feel it. You're not gonna have all of the. Your body isn't gonna catch up to everything immediately. I'm still doing it even a year out, and I'm the guy who was doing it first. Why though? That smoothness there, unbelievable. If I hit the lighting right, you can actually see the old wrinkle that went through right here, crosses over through the eye, down, and whenever I take it still, and whenever I have the flashes of my body slowly catching up, it's in that region. It's in this region right here, throbbing. And it even looks better than I looked at it a few days ago. Yeah. You can't see it nearly as well with this lighting. But yeah, I am turning 34 in April. Let's see. Correct. Yeah. Okay. Most of the way done through here. No, I did not run into, well, there have been issues. Oh, let's see. How much forskolin was I taking? I'd say about half a gram per day. I wasn't stacking it like I was with the Apigenic. Yeah. All right. If you want, we can talk about the methylation test. Obviously, the biggest problem that we have from the beginning has been proof. Other than, academia and the political body's refusal to admit that it even works. As evidence. I don't expect there to be very many views on this at all. I expect really for this video to be ignored, just like a lot of it has, so when I took my methylation test, I knew that I wasn't the only one that was taking fortified apigenin at that point, and I know I wasn't the only one that was having their blood tested. It's like, I just know. I was in contact with some high-profile people at that time. The name will just make me sound crazier if I say it, but I know that my methylation test was tampered with. It could have been that they ran it through an automated system to an extent, and it didn't know what to do, and they didn't correct that, because in the explanation, when I submitted my blood sample, I told them in my notes that came with it what was going on. I gave them a link to the Rentry, and they would have known what was going on completely. Why did they do it? Because it would have been evidence that no one could have refuted. When I first got it, it seemed to me that, like, okay, well, I'm certainly not the age. I certainly haven't aged, is what it also agreed to, or what it shows, because it's at about the same level that I tested at back in like 2020 or 2021. Like 3 or 4 years or something had passed between when, I think I have a note for it. When was my first methylation test? trying to remember where was that? Hold on. I think it was like 2020 or something when I took my first methylation test. Yeah, 2020. It was 2020 when I took it, and I presented at the time at the age of 28, which is the same number that they gave back to me when I took this test again after having taken fortified Apigenic. It really comes down to a question of histone deacetylase inhibition now, doesn't it? Could I have been activating all of those factors? It's an interesting point, because essentially the argument is that you can activate these genes. You see some of this in the overlap with some of the conversation going on around Repsox and forskolin in their cocktails. They're saying that it only works one time and it gives you an extra 20%, which is fine. I mean, I'll go through that in a second here, but ultimately, we know that this works to enough of a degree where the only way that I would be okay with taking another test is if I'm doing the test myself. And I'm kind of in the stages of doing that. If I can get the proper funds together, that's essentially what I plan on doing. I plan on getting all the kit together and running the test myself. I'm also going to be getting a hold of I'm going to get a pet, basically, that's disabled in a way that we'll be able to visually measure. And we'll go from there. So that is being worked on, but I mean, it is legally arguable that it was a mistake that they got my last methylation test wrong, which I think is horseshit, but it's where we're at. I think the majority of the population who knows me, or the majority of the people who know me in my own life, they can't. When it really started coming in on my eyes, they distanced on trying to have me locked up. It's kind of how it went. I come from a very religious background, so my parents, the idea of this is very upsetting to them. So that's kind of where they're working from. Yeah. But no, I'm willing to take a test again. I'm willing to do all of it. We just need to make sure that it's done right, because I have very little trust in the process, given the people who I know that I've spoken with at this point. Not to name names, it's just, think of someone who should know on this planet, and they do. There is absolutely zero chance that Brian Thompson did not know about Apigenic Health. Zero chance that Brian Thompson didn't know about it. You can bring up whether or not the shooter did, but I don't think it's particularly relevant, actually. I don't. And he should not have died. You should have listened to me back in December of last year. 2023. About what that's going to feel like for a lot of people, When are they going to hear about it? 2027, 28, 2035? And they get told that we've known about it for a decade and did nothing. It's a moral hazard. The highest. I mean, it's hard to think of anything that's of a. How does it get worse than this? I don't know. I think that's also part of the reason why they don't want to talk, because they're scared. These are people in high office that have an incredible amount of power and influence, and they know that they can't get rid of it. They know it's just going to continue to spread. They know that, historically speaking, no one's going to be able to look at the time in which they were in office and say, they should have done something. say that they should. Anyway. Let's see, what else do we need to get through? Other than the fact that you all should just fucking listen to me. I think, do you have any more questions in the list? No, doesn't look like it. So that's where we're left. Basically, we're a year into this, you know. I think that humanity has finally achieved a solution to one of its most core problems. And what do you know? It wasn't really the solution we were looking for. It really wasn't, you know, there are bigger problems. That's a sobering thought, that humanity as a whole has bigger problems than simply knowing how to heal people. You know, and that's again why I get into that's why I take my position that I do with Brian Thompson, that some people have the feeling and the inclination to believe that this is all just a big game that they can play with other people's lives. They get into realms of responsibility and authority, and they're only interested in making life hell for others. There are people who have lined up to try to have me killed at this point. It's not very successful. I don't think they're motivated enough in some ways, because again, they know that if I die, this whole situation suddenly changes, you know? Sure, I'm not out there telling people, but it's very final, death. You know? It's very final. As far as compromising me, I mean, there's nothing really to compromise. I'd lay out my body easily if it could just get this job done. I don't think that killing anyone in particular really changes things. What's probably going to happen is we are going to have to wait years for the world to catch up with itself. It'll continue to spread, and eventually humanity will do what it always does, and it'll just make a mistake again. And, you know, and then it'll be out there. It's very unlikely that there's going to be a better method than what I've prescribed. So, in the people who have lined up to kind of torture me personally, because again, some people, they take the religious and philosophical aspect of this as Matt Newman has to be punished for bringing this to the world. I have to be treated like Sisyphus, which was kind of, I won't lie, when I made the original discovery and I knew that I was going to be the one who would bring this to the world, I knew that there was a good chance I was going to, you know? That's just how people are. I'd say the only thing that's happened outside of that is there have been methods and means available to those within power that were beyond what I thought were possible. I'll definitely say that. At a certain point, there's been a component to this which has been military-esque in censorship, and I'm sure plenty of people have been threatened. But again, their angle with me is that I have to be gotten rid of, but I have to also be, because you see, if I'm just shot, then there's a reason for why I was shot. They want me to look delusional. They want me to look crazy and have me locked up so that then it's easier for no one to ever have to think about this topic again. I know that there is pressure being put on the people even working with Repsox and Forskolin to delay this as much as possible. David, even if they, the last thing I'd add on that, just because we're in that circle of knowledge, it's also been brought up that if they do bring this up, or it does, you know, inevitably when it does, for the people who will admit that, that it will inevitably come to the whole world. They want to blame David Sinclair, who would definitely have been one of the first people to have known. He's more of just a talking head in this space. The litany of people who were involved in this, too many names to count. But he was known specifically for going on camera and talking about cellular reprogramming and using this method, although not with Apigenic. And they've talked about blaming him. And he's been willing, from what I understand, he was also willing to take the heat. It goes back to my belief that there is no one singular person that is to blame for this. Maybe in the beginning. Maybe in the beginning there were things that specific people could have done differently. But at this point, I think it's just everyone's so freaking terrified. Because, like, no one could have written a science fiction novel that would have gone down quite like this. Nobody. The idea that not only does this process work, but the molecules are readily available, it's frightening. The fact that it works so well, nuclear reactions, actual nuclear reactions, are also not too difficult once you have the right materials to make. It's just the refinement and making it work in the most optimal fashion. That was most of the secrets that went, between. That's where most of the top secret material would be. It's not in the basic idea of how an explosion would occur. This whole concept is like people can just do it themselves. The actual transcription mechanism itself isn't even the apigenin. Apigenin's just feeding it. This is transcription technology that, in a sense, already exists in your body. It's like it's telling everybody that they have this superpower, that they can just regrow their limbs whenever they need to, that they can regenerate their bodies as long as they get the special sauce, the nutrients, the fortified apigenin. What else could I possibly need to confess that I know it needs to be some way written down? It really hurt in the beginning. For me, it really hurt. I don't feel as if you need some profound philosophical argument for any of it. I think that for the most part, people are dealing with this situation in the most convenient way that it is for them. Most people don't want to stick their neck out for something that, in a sense, even though they're taking it. What's interesting is that for all the people who want to stop others from having it, very few of those people aren't taking it themselves or wouldn't take it if they had the opportunity. I think that's about as telling as it needs to be. It's just greed and selfishness and the fact that we have an imperfect system of engaging with one another. Yes, I maybe only need one take. I don't know. I wish I could do the live stream because then I could, gauge things off of people more. Please subscribe, just so I'll be able to do that. I need at least 50 subscribers before I can live stream. What do you do, other than organize? I think it's like I keep on fighting. I keep on just wishing and hoping that someone's going to do the right thing when I'm the only one that seems to be doing it. I'm the only one that I know of that's actively going out there and telling people, other than, some people will tell their family and their friends, you have that aspect. But I mean, I've put it out in a lot of places. I still got a lot more to do too. What can I tell you, kids? Tuning in 5, 10, 100 years from now? On a very basic level, it's that human beings are barbaric to each other, and we've been that way the entire time. As refined as we like to claim ourselves, as much as we're for free speech and science and medical advancement, if we actually it's just so funny because it's like when we finally have the capacity, we suddenly disparage it. It doesn't mean anything to be able to do this. I don't know. I'm not convinced. It helps that it's evident on people's faces, that you can just tell, at a certain point, especially with the older people that have taken it, because it also does the chlorine eye bit to them as they're slowly catching up, because it's all about having a stabilized or flatlined methylation profile, one could say. And what I mean by profile is the different parts of the body that have had their cells methylated at different points because of the regular wear. And it's interesting to the human, or just to the biological condition, that the eyes react the way that they do. Because, I mean, it's just interesting that organ in particular has so much, it's so involved with the process. The eyes are highly involved with the process. And it's clear that regular human life never gets a proper methylation profile to the eyes, that where the cells are actually operating at their maximum capacity. Right, because you can see the bagginess in the eyes even of some children. So that's why I'm fine with giving it to people that are young. I wouldn't put them on it for a month. I'd want more data on it, but just give it to them for like maybe a week tops, and just see how they're feeling about it, whether or not they notice any changes. Give them a few months on it. For some people, they're in high school and they've done sports where it's definitely going to be helpful. Gosh, it regrows tissue, because it regrows bone, it regrows organs. It can literally just put you back together slowly. Your body knows how to do it all on its own, because your body was grown. It has all the instructions there. It just needs the right nudge. And I love, the obvious comparisons, that we're not just simply reprogramming cells with this, that we're actually reprogramming the entire human condition. We're bringing the human condition into a very intimate space where we can heal. No. I'd be very surprised if there's a large number. Well, certainly not in the beginning. No one's going to really listen to this. But I'm mostly talking to the people who are going to find out about this when it's really been too late. I'll be there. So you'll be able to ask me, how to go from then on out. My plan right now is I'm trying to get together the means for me to distribute in multiple states and be able to do that for a long period of time. I may or may not be able to do that at this juncture. I can tell you that there's been a lot going along in my personal life to where the whole thing, many would say my life has been, if it weren't for the fact that I'm 10 years younger than what I was before, and I'm back into my early 20s, and I get that kind of fresh start with my life. If it weren't for that, I really went for a bad bender this year, this past year. I really just, just threw the whole thing away. Quit my job. Hopefully going to be able to get some money from selling my house and see where that goes. If not, I mean, I have a skill set where I'll be able to get some kind of employment and just get to work. And imagine I may just have to do this nightlining, just do it on the weekends, drive out to some other state, distribute it there, something. Just keep on getting it to as many people as I can, more and more. The problem is that you know that it's not enough. It's like, when I go out, as I have, how do I pick a spot? When I was first doing it, it was like, okay, where would I go? I went around hospitals. I targeted specifically, specifically people who I thought would need it the most. When I was doing it, distributing to people's houses, leaving notices there. Sometimes I didn't want to cross the street, and I would just keep on going down the road that I was going on for the next few hours, and it's like, why didn't I take a left there, Maybe that person that I could have gone to over there needed it more than the people I'm going to in this way. You don't know. You don't know. Which is why ultimately you have to rest the responsibility on the people who do know and on the people who've been informed. I mean, just the spectacle of it. Just the spectacle. Shines so freaking brightly that, what do you mean he's put out thousands of these notices and no one says anything about it? What do you mean the police haven't showed up yet? What do you mean there are people in the military who have signed up to try and have you removed? And they hem and haw about doing it with violence. I've had physical violent threats made against me that I didn't necessarily believe. I called them out on that bluff, but threats were made, Death is hardly the scariest thing here for me. It's really just having to accept that this is the world that I'm in. Alright, well, this whole thing's just going to turn into me ranting. Well, this whole thing's been me ranting and raving. Is there anything else? Anything else I need to say? Try to clear my conscience. They tried to make it about the election. That if one person won versus the other, that it would matter or not. I didn't want to believe that either. I think in the end it just comes down to the masses. The masses are the people who elect those that are in charge, that make the choices that have brought us to this current position. And it seems pretty clear that what's happened to me has happened to other people as well, where innovations, discoveries are made, and because it throws a wrench in too many things, it's gotten rid of. And the person who made the discovery has gotten rid of. I feel like because of particular choices that I made at the very beginning, that has become impossible for anyone to do. Because, again, I got it out to the right people on the internet. And I know that there are people who are withheld, almost seemingly by a legal mechanism, from being able to reach me. I know that there are people who have tried to send me money, who would be very happy to do that, but aren't allowed. So that's why I stopped listing my Bitcoin address. I've never received a penny for this. Never received one penny. what will it take? It's going to take something that's incredibly painful. Because no one wants to admit that our society does this. No one would want to admit that the whole thing really is as bad as you can imagine. What else do you do? I don't know, I'm just screaming at a camera. Screaming at a planet that, on one hand, says that it's for medicine, it's for the health and well-being of others. I didn't make this thing up. I didn't make up the idea of being able to reprogram your cells. I used research that was already out there. It's like mankind wanted this. Period. And we have no answer. We have no reply. We have no reasonable excuse other than the four I listed. And even those just seem to be a cover for the fact that human beings are just scared. They're scared of what it would mean that they have to actually choose to die. You know? Death is one of those things where the whole time, up until about a year ago, you had no choice in it. Period. You were just simply going to die. In a very, degrading sense. You weren't going to have 40 years of a body that works and then the thing starts to fall apart. No, the thing starts falling apart from the beginning, more or less. These epigenetic changes are what have been called somatic, in that they are inherent to the conditions of biology. It's a normal process for, as we've generally observed, for the human body to disintegrate over time, in the loss of cellular identity, the loss of your cells being able to perform their functions. You restore that, and then it becomes a choice. Do you want to live to be 100, 150, 550? You know? When we write the history for this, that's the best explanation we're going to be able to have, is fear and corruption and greed and all those other things, you know? I think, and again, it just stinks. Just stinks. The whole thing just reeks of this tremendous odor. Some people want to tell me that, it's some Illuminati cult thing or whatever. Then why did we get here, folks? How did we get here if this isn't ultimately what humanity wanted? So, I have the luxury of being of it being a very unique discovery, in that I'm going to live to see the world change from this current perspective that we have today. I'm going to live to see that. And if I hadn't have done everything that I could have, I'd want to die. I'd want to die, if I hadn't have just tried everything that I could possibly think of to get this on television, to get this on the news, to get people to just say it. Just say that it happened. Say that we have it. What if we just say that it happened, but we don't even say the ingredients, and try to go from there, and just having some kind of public discussion about it? Like, I'm floored. I'm spending here, we're about an hour and 20 minutes. I still can't find good enough words that I feel are going to be good enough to explain it to these kids that haven't been born yet, that are never going to know what it was like. how do I do that for the world without making them more afraid of themselves and each other and of their leadership? It's like there was responsibility that was supposed to have been grabbed here, folks. And everyone that could have done something chose to do nothing. So that's where we're left. Same today as it was last year. Except, a few thousand people at least now. I've been told that it's bigger. That there are some, that this is definitely, I know, I've talked to people in other countries, so I know it's definitely not just, the Colorado area that's aware of apigenic health at this point. I know it's gotten more or less every major country, at least in some form. There are people there that have it. I know that the medical community, they definitely have it. It's like, do I tell you that, yeah, your doctor knows and they don't want to tell you? I mean, I wouldn't say every doctor, but it's known and quantified. I pray and I beg the world to just open up to its own capacities. I'm fearful because I'm led to believe that if this isn't the first time that this has happened, if this is normal, there are things to this world that are known, mysteries, secrets that belong to everybody, that should be known by everybody. That would be the kind thing to do. So what? Do they do it because they think that they should exploit everyone? Is it done because they just think that everyone's too stupid? I think, again, it comes back to, on an individual level, each and every human being involved has gone with the most convenient situation that works for them. It's convenience. A moment, just trying to make sure I've got my heart out there, that I've said everything that I need to say. It's trash day, That's the joke that some people have putzed around. The idea that, well, on my planet, we don't even call it immortality. We just take the fortified Apigenic. What do you mean? Oh, good. You guys aren't falling over from those diseases anymore. And the joke being that, on other planets, some of them celebrate it as a holiday, but, ultimately it comes down to just being called trash day because it's just garbage. These methylation markers that incessantly accumulate around our DNA are not healthy for us. They lead to a degradation in bodily function, ultimately death. And the idea that a nutrient complex or a fortified organic molecule is able to basically trigger an immune system reaction that fixes this problem, it corrects that, stimulates tissue to regrow as well. It's like the body wants to heal itself, or else I wouldn't be here. The human body is as an organism, is a large conscious organism. I'm the human being that's showing other human beings how to reprogram themselves in that sense. And it's just going to continue to spread. And what's interesting is that, you know, just like with the Apigenin, from the beginning, it was targeted to the most important regions first. The most important people in the world knew before everyone else. Important. So you start there, because it's just decided by the immune system, by the reactive body. It tries to fix infections, clear out mistakes, remove things from the body that shouldn't be there, like methylation levels being as problematic as they are. And it just continues to work. It has to be reapplied. Again, it's not one of those, you take it once and it helps only to a certain degree. It has to actually impact every single part of the body. That takes time. It's not up to me that it took over a year, which is kind of what I'm slowly having to accept. That it's not my fault. A lot of the people who have targeted me have taken that angle. That if I was just, which is pointless because I know who they are. But yeah. You have to be able to confront the fear. You have to be able to move through it. Period. That's in many ways what people would call the ultimate lesson in anything, because the human body reacts to fear in ways that it doesn't always understand, or else we wouldn't be here. So I'm going to sit, I'm going to think for a while. This is probably only going to be one cut. I meant for it to be a live stream. I'm sorry that people couldn't tune in and maybe ask additional questions. Really, yeah, this is more just for having a solid record. My ongoing deposition that I have to make publicly regarding my situation, because people are going to want to know what the freak I was doing, as I knew. It'll happen. It will inevitably happen. So I guess I'll just have to leave you with that. And if I get a bunch more questions, I'll run up another one of these videos. I'll try to do other things to check in, you know. But I wish you well. I hope that the Apigenin, when properly fortified, is able to assist your body. And I hope that each and every one of you does everything within your capacity as a human being to get this to others. And I'll leave you with that. Have a great day.